You know how sometimes people think strength is about how tall you stand or how loud your voice sounds. I used to think that too, but then my world broke. My family was taken from me, stolen in a night of fear and silence. I was small, but that night made me feel even smaller. I cried. I screamed. I thought if I shouted loud enough, maybe the river itself would give them back. But the Red River only carried my tears away. That's when I realized something. I couldn't stay frozen. If I wanted answers, if I wanted justice, I had to move. I had to walk into the dark, even if my legs shook with every step. So now I hunt. Not like in fairy tales, where you wait for someone to save you. No, I learned to save myself. I hunt the shadows, the whispers, the ones who think they can break leaves and walk away. Every time I cross that river, I remember the faces I lost. I remember their laughter, their warmth. And I make a promise right there on the water's edge. I will not stop. Not until the killers are found. Not until silence is broken. I may be young. My voice may still tremble. But my heart carries the strength of everyone who can't speak anymore. That strength runs in my veins like fire. So when you see me standing, don't see just a girl. See a fighter. See someone who carries grief, yes, but also courage. See someone who walks over the Red River chasing justice. Because she lost her family, and now she hunts the killers. Loss turns into strength, but not in the way people usually imagine. When I first lost everything, it felt like the ground had been pulled out from under me. I couldn't breathe without thinking of their faces, and every sound around me felt like an echo of what was missing. I would wake up at night with the weight of emptiness pressing down, the silence in the house louder than any scream I could make. People said time would heal me, but time didn't bring them back. Time only stretched the ache further and further, like a shadow that never faded. I thought I would drown in it, but then I started noticing something I didn't expect. Every time I cried, I would remember a moment when my family had lifted me up, when they had told me not to give up, when they had reminded me that I was stronger than I thought. Those memories became sharper after they were gone, like they had been carved into me. I began to realize that carrying the pain also meant carrying their voices. It wasn't just sadness. It was a reminder that they lived inside me, and if I let the loss crush me, then I would be letting their voices die too. So I stood up even when my knees shook. At first, I didn't think of it as strength. I thought of it as survival, the stubborn choice not to stay on the floor when everything in me wanted to collapse. But over time, those small choices, getting up, walking forward, refusing to hide, started to feel like power. It wasn't the kind of power that makes you invincible. It was quieter but deeper. It was the strength of a heart that had already been shattered and somehow kept beating. Every painful memory became fuel. When I thought of the way my family laughed around the table, I remembered that joy still mattered even if it was gone. When I thought of the way they protected me, I knew I had to protect myself now. And when I thought of how unfairly they were taken, I felt the fire rise inside me, pushing me to act, to fight, to refuse to let their story end in silence. That fire was born from loss, but it turned into something I could lean on, something I could trust when everything else felt fragile. Strength didn't come to me all at once. It came in moments, like when I chose to cross the Red River, even though the water terrified me. It came when I kept walking into the unknown instead of turning back. It came when I looked into the darkness that had taken them and refused to look away. I didn't grow strong because I stopped being afraid. I grew strong because I carried my fear with me and kept going anyway. Loss had stripped me down, but it also showed me what couldn't be broken, no matter how hard the world tried. Sometimes people think strength means never crying, never shaking, never showing the pain. But I learned that my tears didn't make me weak. They made me human, and they reminded me what I was fighting for. The loss sharpened every emotion, carved me raw, and instead of closing off my heart, it opened it wider. I could feel anger, grief, and love all tangled together, and it was in that mix that I discovered the kind of strength I had never known before. Not the strength of armor, but the strength of scars, the kind that shows you survived and keeps you moving. Loss turned into strength when I realized it could no longer control me. It could shape me, yes. It could bend me and scar me, but it could not end me. The strength I carry is not separate from the pain. It is born from it. It is the proof that I am still here, still standing, even after everything was taken. And as long as I keep standing, the love I lost still lives in me, guiding me forward, pushing me into the fight that I was never supposed to face, but that I now refuse to abandon. The Red River, as a symbol of memory and promise, is more than just water flowing between two banks. It is a boundary, a line that divides what was from what is, a reminder of everything that has been lost and everything that must be carried forward. Every time I stand before it, I see more than its current. I see the weight of the past reflected in its surface. I see the faces I will never see again in the ripples that shift and scatter, as if the river itself is keeping their presence hidden beneath its depths. It whispers of endings, yet it also calls me to cross, to step into the unknown where answers wait. The river is not just a place. It has become a living symbol that ties my grief to my determination. When I first came to the Red River after my family was taken, I felt like it was mocking me. The water flowed without care, as if nothing had changed, while my whole world had been shattered. I threw stones into it, trying to break its surface, trying to make the river acknowledge my pain. But every stone sank, leaving only ripples that faded as quickly as they appeared. That silence, that indifference, cut me deeply. It was as though the river had swallowed my cries along with everything I had lost. Yet the more I returned, the more I began to see that it wasn't mocking me. It was showing me something I had not understood. Life flows on, with or without me. The current does not wait, and if I wanted to keep their memory alive, I could not wait either. The Red River became the place where I made my promises. I would stand at its edge and whisper their names, vowing never to forget them, vowing to carry them into every step I took. I began to think of the water as carrying my words forward, carrying them to places I could not yet reach. When I promised to find the truth, I did it on the riverbank, with the cold wind cutting my skin and the sound of the rushing water in my ears. That sound became a reminder that promises cannot be empty. The river listens, and it expects me to follow through. Crossing the river became a ritual. Each time I stepped onto its bridge, or waded through its shallow banks when the water was low, I felt as though I was walking between worlds. On one side was the life I had lost, the innocence that would never return. On the other side was the pursuit of justice, the fire that kept me moving. The crossing itself felt like a test. The river asked me, "Are you ready to leave behind what was safe, what was known, to step into the dangers that wait on the far side?" And each time, even trembling, I chose yes. The Red River is stained in my mind with both grief and strength. Its name carries the color of blood, the reminder of violence, but also the burning determination that comes after. Every reflection in its water reminds me of the past, but every crossing promises a future shaped by my resolve. It binds the two together, memory and promise, so I cannot separate them. I cannot think of my family without thinking of the river, and I cannot think of my fight without thinking of the river either. It has become the thread that holds the story together. I began to notice that when I stood by the water, I could hear more than just the current. I could almost hear voices, soft and faint, not in words but in feeling. I took that as a sign. The river was not empty. It carried echoes, and those echoes reminded me that I was not alone. Even in the moments I felt abandoned, the Red River became proof that memory lingers in places, that love leaves traces in the world even after the people are gone. My promises did not vanish into the air when I spoke them. They sank into the river, and the river carried them, binding me to them so I could never turn away. The Red River, for me, is no longer just geography. It is a living oath. It is where memory rests and where promises are forged. Each time I see it, I am reminded of what I have lost, but I am also reminded of what I must do. It is both wound and weapon, both sorrow and strength. And so I return to it again and again because it holds the balance of everything I am fighting for. Hunting not for revenge, but for justice is a path that feels heavier than it sounds. People often confuse the two, as if anger and vengeance are the only reasons someone would choose to fight. But I have learned that revenge burns fast, like a fire that devours everything in its path, even the one who lit it. Justice, though, is different. Justice is not about feeding anger, it is about restoring balance, about giving voice to the silence left behind. My steps are guided not by the hunger to destroy, but by the need to honor what was taken, and to ensure that such darkness cannot spread unchallenged. When I think of revenge, I imagine myself consumed by rage, acting without thought, striking out because the pain inside demands release. That kind of fire might feel powerful in the moment, but it is empty. It does not bring back the people I lost. It does not heal the wound that was cut into my life. It only leaves me hollow, no different from the ones who created this pain in the first place. Justice is harder. It takes patience. It demands clarity when all I want to do is scream. Justice forces me to stand taller, to think not only of myself, but of everyone else who could suffer if the truth is buried. That is the weight I carry when I hunt. The killers believed they could silence my family, erase their lives like they never existed. They believed the world would forget. If I hunted them for revenge alone, I would only be feeding into the cycle they started, making my story end in the same darkness. But when I hunt for justice, I turn the light back onto them. I expose what they tried to hide. Justice is not about how much I hurt them, but about making sure they cannot hurt anyone else again. It is about giving weight to the lives that were lost, so they are not reduced to shadows. I remind myself constantly that every step forward is not just for me. It is for the laughter that was stolen, the love that was cut short, the futures that will never be lived. Revenge would make this fight only about my pain. Justice makes it about their memory, about something greater than myself. When I think of my family, I see their faces not begging me to burn everything down, but urging me to keep the truth alive. Justice honors them. Justice is what keeps them alive in me. There are nights when the anger rises, when I want nothing more than to lash out and see the killers suffer the way I have suffered. I am not blind to that feeling. It crawls beneath my skin, hot and restless. But when I stand before the Red River and feel the current pulling, I remember that anger alone will only drag me under. Justice is the rope that holds me steady, the reminder that this fight has purpose beyond pain. It transforms that anger into focus. It turns fire into light instead of smoke. Hunting for justice means I do not run blindly. I listen, I watch, I gather every piece of truth that can be uncovered. I do not let emotion alone guide me, because justice is not reckless. It is deliberate, it is careful, it is steady even when my heart pounds with fury. Justice requires strength that revenge never will, because it demands restraint. It demands I hold my head high when I want to bow down to grief. It demands I keep walking even when every step feels heavier than the last. The difference is clear every time I imagine the end. If I pursued revenge, the story would end with me becoming a mirror of the ones I hate, another shadow shaped by violence. If I pursue justice, the story ends with truth revealed, with silence broken, with my family's memory carried forward in dignity. Justice is not quick, and it is not easy, but it is the only path that does not destroy me along the way. So I hunt, not to satisfy rage, but to bring weight back to the lives that were stolen. I hunt to show that they cannot vanish into nothingness. I hunt so that the killers face what they have done, not in secret, but in the open where they cannot hide. Justice is not a weapon I carry in my hands, but in my heart. It is the reason I rise when I want to stay down, the reason I keep going when the night grows too dark. It is the promise that this fight is not about vengeance, but about making sure the truth is seen and the silence is broken forever. A young girl carrying courage beyond her years is not a story that begins with strength. It begins with fear. I did not wake up one day and suddenly feel brave. I was afraid of the dark, afraid of being alone, afraid of the shadows that stretched too long across the floor. But losing everything forced me into a place where fear could no longer decide my steps. I was too young to hold the weight that fell on me, yet I carried it because there was no one else left to do it. Courage was not a choice I made freely. It was the only path left when the world collapsed around me. At first, the weight felt impossible. I looked at myself in the mirror and saw only a girl with trembling hands and eyes swollen from crying. No one would have looked at me and thought I could survive what happened. But as the days passed, something began to change. Every small act of moving forward became a kind of courage. Getting out of bed when the silence of the house pressed against me. Walking to the river when every step reminded me of their absence. Choosing not to let the killers fade into the safety of shadows. Each act felt tiny, almost invisible, but together they built a strength that even I couldn't see at first. People think courage is about being fearless, but I learned that courage is about feeling the fear completely and walking through it anyway. I carried my fear with me like a shadow, always close, but I refused to let it rule me. I carried it across the Red River, into the unknown places where I searched for answers. I carried it through sleepless nights when the memories clawed at me. Courage was not loud. It was not the kind of thing people would notice from the outside. It was quiet, steady, hidden in the way I kept going when no one believed I could. Being young made it harder because I had no armor to protect me, no experience to guide me. But being young also gave me a fire that others might not have. I did not yet know how to bend under the weight of despair. I had not yet learned to numb myself or to turn away from pain. My heart was raw, my emotions sharp, and that made me stubborn. It made me hold on to the fight with everything I had, because I didn't know how to give up. That stubbornness, that refusal to let go, became the root of my courage. There were times when I wanted to hide, to close my eyes and pretend I was still the girl I used to be. But every time I felt myself slipping into that wish, I remembered my family. I remembered their voices, their laughter, their love. They were gone, but they lived in me, and if I chose to hide, I would be letting them disappear twice. That thought gave me strength I did not know I could hold. My courage was not just mine. It was theirs, passed down to me in memory, woven into the promises I made at the river. Courage beyond my years meant standing in places where I should not have been, facing dangers I should not have faced, asking questions no one wanted me to ask. It meant walking alone into silence, knowing I could be swallowed by it, and still refusing to turn back. It meant speaking when my voice shook, fighting when my body trembled, refusing to stop even when the road ahead stretched endlessly. It meant carrying grief in one hand and determination in the other, balancing both without letting either destroy me. Every step I took made me older than I was, but not in a way that stole my youth. Instead, it sharpened my sense of who I was becoming. I was no longer just a girl who had lost everything. I was a girl who refused to let loss define her. Courage gave me an identity beyond the tragedy. It gave me the strength to transform the pain into purpose, the silence into action. To carry courage beyond my years is to live with a heart that has been broken but still beats fiercely. It is to know that fear never leaves, but strength grows beside it. It is to stand in the shadow of the Red River and understand that what I carry is heavier than what most could bear. Yet I do not set it down. It is to move forward not because I am fearless, but because I am determined to honor the lives that gave me the reason to fight. From silence to an unbreakable voice is not a simple journey. It begins with the weight of words unsaid. In the beginning, there was only silence. Silence in the empty house. Silence in the moments when I wanted to call out for my family and remembered they would never answer. Silence in my chest where once there had been warmth and laughter. That silence felt suffocating, like being buried under something invisible but heavy. I wanted to scream, but no sound came. I wanted to tell the world what had been stolen from me, but I didn't know how. My voice felt trapped, too small against the enormity of the loss. The silence was not just around me, it was inside me. It wrapped itself around my thoughts, my fears, my grief. For a long time, I believed that silence would swallow me whole, that my story and my family's story would vanish into it. No one asked me to speak, no one expected me to. I was just a girl, and what power could my voice possibly have against the weight of death and cruelty? But silence is deceptive. It makes you believe you are powerless, when in truth it is only waiting to be broken. The first time I spoke about what happened, my voice shook so badly I thought no one could hear me. But even if it trembled, it was enough to crack the silence. I realized then that my voice did not have to be perfect, it only had to exist. Every word I spoke was like a stone thrown into the still surface of the Red River. The ripples spread, and I felt them inside me, breaking the hold silence had kept over me. Slowly, word by word, the silence loosened its grip. My voice grew not because I stopped being afraid, but because I carried the fear with me and spoke anyway. Each time I whispered my family's names, each time I told the truth about what had been taken, the silence weakened. It shrank back, replaced by something stronger, something brighter. Speaking out was not just about me. It was about refusing to let their lives be erased, refusing to let their memory disappear into the shadows. My voice became the vessel that carried them forward, and once I understood that, it could not be silenced again. An unbreakable voice is not born loud. It is born from struggle, from the countless moments of doubt and hesitation, from the quiet strength of refusing to remain voiceless. My voice became unbreakable the moment I realized it was no longer only mine. It carried the weight of those who could not speak anymore. It carried promises made at the edge of the Red River, promises that demanded to be heard. The killers could take lives, but they could not take away the truth, not as long as I had breath to speak it. With time, my voice became more than a cry of grief. It became a weapon sharper than any blade, stronger than any chain. I used it to call out what was hidden, to bring light where shadows tried to reign. My voice gave me power I had never imagined I could hold. Even when people doubted me, even when they tried to push me back into silence, I spoke louder. Every attempt to silence me only made my voice harder, stronger, more determined. The unbreakable voice I carry now is a shield and a torch. It shields me from being forgotten, from being erased by the cruelty of others. It is a torch that lights the way through darkness, guiding me across the Red River, pushing me further on the path of justice. It echoes with pain, but it also carries love. It speaks of loss, but it also carries defiance. It remembers what was taken, but it also insists on what must never be forgotten. From silence to an unbreakable voice, the journey is marked by scars and tears, but it is also marked by resilience. The silence that once threatened to consume me has become the foundation of the strength I now carry in every word. My voice does not tremble the way it once did, but even if it did, it would still be unbreakable, because nothing can take away the truth it holds. Nothing can silence the promise that I will continue to speak, to fight, to carry forward the story that others tried to end.